Through the storm, a German shepherd lunges from the shadows, barking with fury, and a police officer runs in behind him. What they uncover will rip open a hidden crime and reveal a truth no one expected. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from. If you believe no child or animal should ever face fear alone, hit subscribe now and share this story with someone who needs hope. Portland, in mid-January, lay under a pale sky that gave no warmth. Streets were slick with frozen slush, porches rimmed with ice. At the end of a quiet block stood a yellow two-story house with black shutters. On the porch stood a small boy, barefoot in thin socks, a damp blue sweater clinging to his shoulders. He was 5 years old, his lips already turning purple. His name was Caleb Turner. He hugged a battered teddy bear close to his chest. Inside the house moments earlier, Victoria Hale had poured a bucket of cold water over him. She was 35, tall and willowy, her blonde hair pinned into a perfect twist. Her pale blue eyes carried no softness. "Inside is for family," she had told him coldly. "You are not," and she had closed the door. Her companion, Robert Steele, had chuckled as the door shut, muttering "little roach." From the street, a German shepherd appeared, moving steadily through the drifts. He was large, strong, his sable coat dusted with white, his amber eyes fixed sharply on the child. Without hesitation, he climbed the steps and stood between Caleb and the yard. Lowering his head, nudging the boy's arm gently, Officer Jack Morales had been patrolling when he spotted them. The German shepherd bristled as Jack approached, a low growl in his chest. Jack lowered his flashlight, hands open. "Easy," he said evenly. "I'm not here to hurt him." He knelt by the boy. "What's your name?" "Caleb," the boy whispered. "I'm cold." Jack shrugged off his heavy jacket and wrapped it around the child. "Is your mom inside?" "My dad's gone," Caleb said. "Last week. They said it was his time." "She's not my mom." Jack lifted him gently. The shepherd rose with them, pressed close to Jack's leg. Together, they crossed the snowy yard to the cruiser. Jack opened the rear door and set Caleb inside. The shepherd climbed in and curled at his feet. Jack turned the heater on high. He glanced at the teddy bear, soaked and old. Something felt wrong. He pressed along the seam with his thumb. Inside was something solid. "Caleb," Jack said quietly, "may I look at your bear?" The boy nodded. Jack eased open the frayed seam and drew out a small silver key stamped with the Colia Trust logo. It was for a safe deposit box. He slipped it into an evidence pouch, then returned the bear. In his chest grew the certainty that this was more than neglect. The heater in the cruiser hummed as Jack pulled away from the curb. Caleb sat bundled in Jack's jacket, the teddy bear clutched tight. The German shepherd lay curled at his feet. Jack kept his hands steady on the wheel, but inside he weighed what he had just seen. A child locked out, drenched in water, a key hidden in a teddy bear. The police precinct sat downtown. Jack guided the cruiser into the lot and turned to the boy. "Caleb, we're going inside. It'll be warm, and no one here will hurt you. Can he come?" The boy's eyes flicked to the dog. "He stays," Jack answered. "For now, he's yours." Inside, Officer Helen Price sat at the front desk. She looked up as Jack entered with the boy and dog. "Jack's dog stays," Jack repeated, and something in his tone closed the subject. Helen nodded. "Room 4 is empty." Jack guided Caleb to a small interview room. Minutes later, Helen appeared with soup, crackers, and water. Caleb ate in silence, and Jack led him. While Caleb ate, Jack's partner, Sergeant David Hanlon, was waiting near the door. David was thick-set with close-cropped gray hair and a scar down his chin. "Picked up a stray kid?" "Not a stray," Jack said. "Locked out by his stepmother after his father's funeral?" "There's more." He held up the evidence pouch with the Colia Trust key. "Found this in his teddy bear." David's eyes narrowed. "That's not something you sew into a toy for no reason?" "Exactly. Feels bigger than simple neglect." Before David could reply, Karen Ellis from Child Services arrived carrying a clipboard. Jack crossed his arms. "He doesn't leave with anyone tonight. Not until we understand what's going on." Karen met his eyes. "Then I'll sit with you both." Jack stepped back into the room, Karen following. She knelt so her eyes were level with the boys. "Hello, Caleb. My name's Karen. I'm here to make sure you're safe." Jack crouched beside Caleb. "Earlier you said your dad was gone? Can you tell me what you remember about that night?" Caleb's hands tightened on the bear. He was in bed. He was sick. They said it was his time. But I heard him yelling. He said she put something in his drink. Jack kept his face calm. "You heard your dad say that?" Caleb nodded, then buried his face in the bear. The dog pressed closer. Jack rose slowly, exchanging a glance with David and Karen. This was no ordinary case of neglect. "You're safe here, Caleb. No one will hurt you tonight." The boy whispered, "Can I stay with him?" His hands stroked the shepherd's head. "Yes," Jack said firmly. "You both stay." By the following morning, Portland was washed in dull gray light. Jack stood by the coffee machine, his mind on the silver key and the frightened whisper of a 5-year-old. Caleb was resting in the temporary care room with the German shepherd pressed against his legs. David appeared with a folder. "You're still thinking about that key. Hard not to. Kolya, trust deposit box." His father must have hidden something before he died. If the kid's story about poison is true, then whatever's in that box could prove it. Not waiting. We check it today. By mid-morning, arrangements were made. Karen insisted on accompanying them. They loaded into an unmarked sedan. Caleb sat in the back with the bear and the shepherd at Kolya Trust. The lobby was marble and glass. The manager, a woman in her 50s with carefully styled hair, met them with rehearsed courtesy. Jack's badge cut short her questions. They were led downstairs into the vault level. The banker who met them was Martin Keene, a man in his 50s with thinning hair and spectacles. His manner was precise, but his hands trembled. "Officer Morales," he said, "you requested access using this key." Jack handed it over. Martin turned it in his fingers. "Yes, this corresponds to box 417, registered under Richard Turner." "Then let's see it." Martin led them to a private alcove. He unlocked the master lock, then gestured for Jack to use the child's key. Jack crouched to meet Caleb's eyes. "This belonged to your dad. You want to do it?" The boy hesitated, then nodded. His small fingers turned the key. The lock clicked, and Martin slid out a long, flat box. Jack opened it slowly. Inside lay folders, a leather-bound notebook, and a flash drive sealed in a plastic sleeve. The folders contained financial statements, company contracts, and handwritten letters dated weeks before Richard's death. The letters spoke of suspicion recharged, noting discrepancies in company funds, warning that signatures were being forged. The notebook was heavier. Jack flipped it open to find journal entries in Richard's strong hand. The final pages carried sentences that made the room tighten. "I believe Victoria is conspiring with Robert. If anything happens to me, it is no accident." Proof enclosed. Jack looked at Caleb. "Your dad knew what was happening. He left this so the truth wouldn't die with him, so he didn't just leave me." Jack shook his head firmly. "No, he fought to protect you even when he wasn't here anymore." As they walked back through the marble lobby, a man in a dark overcoat stood near the doors, his eyes following them. He was tall, hair slicked back, face unshaven. When Jack's gaze met his, the man gave a faint smile, then turned toward the street. David noticed too. "Trouble," he muttered. Then we stayed 2 steps ahead. The sedan's heater hummed as Jack steered them out of downtown. Traffic crawled along icy streets. Jack's gut had tightened since they left. He had noticed the man in the dark coat. David had seen him too. A glance in the mirror confirmed it. A black SUV 2 cars behind, its windows tinted. It had followed them through 3 turns already. "That's no coincidence," David said. The SUV accelerated, closing distance too quickly. Caleb gripped the shepherd's collar. The dog lifted his head, a low growl rising. Jack turned sharply onto a side street, tires skidding. The SUV followed, closing fast. "Hold on," Jack said. The chase wound through narrow residential lanes. Jack's training kept his movements clean, but every skid was a gamble. "They're not just trying to scare us. They want what we took." which means they know what was in that box. Jack cut toward an industrial stretch where warehouses sat in long rows. The SUV stayed on their tail. Karen leaned over Caleb. "Keep your head down, sweetheart." Jack spotted an underpass ahead. He cut the lights, let the sedan slide beneath the bridge, and braked hard. The Shepherd sprang up, teeth bared. The SUV slowed as it approached. A door opened. A man stepped out, tall and broad-shouldered in a heavy black parka, his face framed by a thick beard. In one hand, he carried a radio. In the other, a crowbar. "Hand over what you took," he called. "Nobody gets hurt." "You're trespassing into police business," Jack called. "Walk away now." The man laughed. "Police business doesn't pay my bills." "Hand it over." Another figure emerged from the SUV, younger with a shaved head. The Shepherd erupted in a bark that echoed off the walls. Jack made his decision. He reversed hard, tires spinning, then shot forward past the SUV. The sudden move caught them off guard. Jack merged into traffic, using the flow of cars like a shield. By the time the SUV forced its way through, the sedan had vanished. Jack drove until the city thinned, finally pulling into a deserted parking lot. He cut the engine. "They wanted Daddy's things," Caleb whispered. "They didn't get them." "That's what matters," David exhaled. "They know we have evidence. They'll keep coming, and we make sure the evidence stays safe, and so does the boy." Jack's phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number. The message was brief. "I know what happened to Richard Turner. Meet me tonight. The old Evergreen Motel, room 6. Tell no one." Jack exchanged a look with David. Is Trapper the first real witness? Either way, we can't ignore it. They waited until dusk before driving out. The Evergreen Motel sat at the edge of Portland, a squat row of rooms with neon letters half burned out. Jack parked close to the office. Room 6's door was chipped blue paint. Jack knocked once. The door opened to reveal a woman in her late 40s. Dorothy Myers was tall but stooped, her hair streaked with gray pulled back in a loose bun. Deep lines creased her pale face. She wore a plain nurse's coat over a heavy sweater. "You came," she said softly. "I was Richard's nurse during his final weeks." She stepped aside. The room smelled of antiseptic. Dorothy motioned for them to sit. "I documented everything." She pulled out a worn notebook. Every visit, every medication, every time Victoria or Robert came by. Jack flipped through the pages. The entries were precise, marked with times and names. One line caught his eye. Robert brought a bottle of wine. Richard accused Victoria, shouting. The next morning, he could hardly speak. Dorothy rubbed her hands together. "I was afraid. I needed the money, and Victoria promised extra if I stayed quiet. But watching Richard fade faster than he should have, they couldn't stay silent anymore."
Ow.
David leaned forward. "You understand what you're admitting? You're placing yourself in the middle of a murder case." Her gaze hardened. "No. That's why I wrote everything down." The Shepherd gave a low rumble, eyes fixed on the door. Jack froze. A shadow passed across the curtain. He motioned everyone down. A knock came, heavy, 3 times. "Dorothy," a man's voice called. "We know you're in there." Jack glanced at her. "Robert's men," Dorothy whispered. The knob rattled. "Police! Leave now!" Jack shouted. Footsteps retreated. Tires squealed outside. The room exhaled. Dorothy pulled a voice recorder from her bag. "I hid this the night Richard shouted at her. He said she poisoned him. His voice is faint, but it's there. Take it, please." Jack pocketed the device carefully. "This will help, but you need protection. I'll move. Just make sure the truth comes out." Snow fell lightly the next morning. Jack stood by the precinct, scanning the street. Officer Frank Doyle strode out, a broad man with sandy hair and a thick mustache. He had a reputation for cutting corners. "Morning," Frank said. "You running some big secret case?" Jack stiffened. "Why?" Frank shrugged. "Word travels. Vice heard you're sitting on something Turner left behind." David's eyes narrowed. "That's supposed to be sealed." Frank raised both hands. "Hey, I'm just saying what's being whispered. He walked off. Jack and David exchanged a look. Leak, David muttered. Or a betrayal. By late morning, Jack decided Caleb needed air. He chose the small city park near the river. Caleb ran ahead, laughing for the first time in days, the shepherd bounding beside him. Jack watched from a bench, David nearby. Near the swings stood a man in his 40s, tall and gaunt, a dark beanie pulled low. When Jack's eyes locked on him, the man looked away. Then a second man stepped from behind a tree, younger, stockier. He moved toward Caleb. The shepherd lunged first, teeth bared, bark shattering the quiet. Jack shoved Caleb behind him. The dog sprang at the stocky man, forcing him back, snarling inches from his throat.
Ellie, step away from the child.
Jack drew his sidearm. The gaunt man bolted. The stocky one stumbled free and sprinted after his partner. Within seconds, both vanished. Karen knelt. Wrapping her arms around Caleb, the shepherd returned to his side, pressing against him. They're escalating, Jack muttered. Trying to grab him in daylight. That's bold and desperate, David said. Karen's eyes were sharp. If they can try this in a public park, nowhere is safe. We need witness housing. Back at the precinct, Jack cornered Frank Doyle in the break room. We need to talk about who's leaking case details. Frank's face darkened. You accusing me? I'm asking. Because only a handful of people knew where we'd be today. Frank's jaw tightened. I don't have to answer to you. You've been in debt since your suspension. I think money talks louder than honor for you. If I'm wrong, prove it. Frank's eyes darted, then dropped. He muttered something about needing fresh air and walked out. David appeared. He's dirty. Jack's fists clenched. Then we watch him. Snow swirled through Portland on the morning of the trial. The courthouse stood as a slab of stone against the storm. Jack guided Caleb up the steps, the shepherd walking at his side. Inside, the courtroom hummed with tension. Judge Raymond Harlow sat solemn at the bench. The prosecution was led by William Anderson, a seasoned district attorney with silver hair. Across the aisle sat Victoria Hale in a black suit, her blonde hair pulled tight. Robert Steele sat beside her, jaw clenched. Anderson's opening was sharp. Richard Turner's death was not natural. It was orchestrated by those who stood to gain from his fortune. We will present financial records, medical tampering, testimony from witnesses, and most importantly, the courage of a child who survived their cruelty. The defense attorney, Leonard Briggs, countered smoothly. We will show that Richard Turner died of illness and that my client is a grieving widow wrongfully accused. The first hours dragged with documents. Anderson submitted bank ledgers showing forged signatures, medical charts altered. Dorothy Myers's diary was read aloud. Each entry a nail in the coffin of Victoria's story, Dorothy herself took the stand. Voice shaking as she confessed her silence but holding firm under cross-examination. Yes, I took money. And it's the worst mistake of my life. But Richard Turner begged me to protect his son. I won't fail him again. Then Anderson called Caleb Turner. The room shifted. Every head turned. Jack crouched beside him. You don't have to be afraid. Caleb walked to the stand, his coat too big, teddy bear clutched at his side. Judge Harlow leaned forward. Young man, do you understand you must tell the truth here? Yes, sir. Anderson knelt. Caleb, can you tell us what happened the night before your father passed away? The boy's eyes shimmered. I heard my dad yelling. He said he pointed at Victoria. She put something in his drink. He said he wouldn't let her take his company. Then he got quiet, and the next morning, he wouldn't wake up. The shepherd barked once, sharp and clear. Anderson finished. No further questions? By late afternoon, Anderson presented the flash drive's contents audio of Richard's final confrontation with Victoria. If you do this, you'll kill me. Victoria's face paled. Judge Harlow allowed it. The jury will consider it. Anderson's voice was grave. Richard Turner tried to protect his son. These defendants tried to silence them both. The evidence shows their guilt. The final day dawned under heavy snow. The jury filed in, faces drawn. Anderson's closing argument was sharp. Richard Turner tried to protect his son from betrayal. He was silenced, but his evidence, his nurse's testimony, and the courage of his child survived.
Ouch.
Briggs countered. We are asked to condemn two people based on the word of a frightened boy and a compromised nurse. The jury retired. Caleb sat between Jack and Karen, teddy bear beneath his coat. The shepherd lay at his feet. When the jury returned, the foreman spoke steadily. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder guilty, erupted. Victoria's face crumbled. Robert slumped forward. Outside, snow still fell. Anderson approached. You did well, Jack. And you, he bent to Caleb, you were brave enough to finish what your father started. In the days that followed, Victoria and Robert were sentenced to life imprisonment. A family court hearing granted Jack guardianship of Caleb. Jack moved them into a small house near the wooded hills. Caleb chose the room with the window facing the pines, pinning his father's photograph above his bed. Life settled into rhythm. Mornings brought pancakes. Karen visited often. David stopped by too. The shepherd, now called Valor, patrolled the house like a sentinel. One evening, as firelight painted the walls, Caleb sat curled in Jack's lap. Do you think Dad knows what happened? Jack looked at the flames. I think he does. And I think he's proud of you. Caleb smiled against his chest. This feels like home. It is home, Jack said. For all of us. In the end, what saved this little boy was more than justice. It was a quiet miracle of love and courage. Sometimes that light comes through the kindness of a stranger, a loyal dog, or the courage to speak the truth. If this story touched your heart, please share it. May God bless you and your family with peace, protection, and unexpected miracles.